Hello, I'm Dr. Randall Bell, and I'm here with Suzanne Wilcox, a great friend, and we're here to talk about some core IQ stuff. We're talking about the healing process. Now, I don't know if you knew this, Suzanne, I think you do, but when I was 11 years old, I had heart surgery, and that was no fun. And what was interesting to me is that I had to go into the hospital and spend basically all summer in recovery. So that was kind of healing a physical wound. But I was having lunch once with Denise Brown, when the whole O.J. Simpson thing was going on. And she said something to me. She said, you know what? Healing from a physical wound is tough. She wasn't trying to discount that. And it was tough on me. But she said, healing from an emotional wound actually is much tougher. Would you agree with that? And how do you see that all going down?
I would agree with that. And what's coming to mind for me right now is if I break my leg, you're not going to ask me to climb the stairs. You're going to say, please take the elevator, let me help you, let me get you a wheelchair.
Right.
It's going to be so clear that I need help with my leg.
Right.
If I have an emotional wound, it's not clear to you. And it's possible you might ask me to do something that I'm not capable of doing. And you won't even know that I'm not capable, and I might not even know how to express to you that I'm not capable. And that's what makes it so difficult for me, I think, when I see people who are going through life with trauma. People have no idea. They look normal. They look like they should be able to climb the stairs, so they're expected to perform at a high level, and they're expected to be high functioning. And then people don't understand why they're not high functioning.
Right.
And it's really frustrating and hard, I think, because they need empathy as much or more than the person with the broken leg.
Right. And the other thing Denise said is that, if you get hit in the eye, that bruise heals up in 2 or 3 weeks. But the emotional wound from somebody hitting you intentionally, that can last months or years or even a lifetime. So two very different things. When I was doing my doctoral research, I was actually meeting with homeowners who had had their homes blown apart by a natural disaster. And you learn about post-traumatic stress disorder, and this lady was very sweet and very kind, very anxious to help me out with my research. I asked her a triggering question, unintentionally. Of course, I didn't want to hurt anybody, and she just started, physically shaking. And I said, "Let's cut, stop. I don't want to cause or reopen an emotional wound." It was clear that question brought back some horrible memories. So we're here to talk about the healing process. I think it's safe to say we're talking about more emotional wounds than physical wounds. Am I right so far about that?
For sure.
Okay, so the black area is kind of the foundation. You want to explain that?
I am an energy healer, so I work with energy,
Sure.
and I do emotional release processing and one-on-one with people. And then when I'm helping someone process emotions and deep trauma, this is the model that I use, and it is really powerful. And there's this underlying foundation of the kind of work I'm doing that has to do with it's heart-centered. I can't solve these problems when I'm in my head. If I'm going to address my own trauma from childhood or any time, I have to go into my heart, and I have to open that heart and look at that wound and sit with it. And it's a very tender space, and usually I can't do it by myself. Usually I have to have someone. It's nice if I have someone holding my hand in that process. And then as the base, there's, that's the intuition, the intuitive part, the going inside. There are the boundaries. I have to feel really safe. I'm not going to go into this space with someone who I don't trust.
Right.
And there's the empathic communication. Word choice is really important so that I don't get triggered by something that is thoughtless or causes unintentional harm. It's best if I do it with someone who has some experience in the delivery. And then the personal energy and the archetypes, I feel like that's general information that I can use to support me on my journey.
Yeah, I get that. Now, you and I have both done some pretty extensive training with, prisoners in San Quentin prison. In fact, I think you've done more training than I have. But when we're talking about having empathy and boundaries, that's really important because, and when you mentioned trust, because those prisoners are talking about some really sensitive topics. And our role in our training was basically sit down and shut up and don't share those stories outside of that confidential setting. So much damage is done when you talk to somebody you can't trust or you shouldn't trust, and they go blabbing around. They take the emotional wounds and make it much, much worse. I mean, do you have some comments about that?
Yes. Well, in the prisons, their lives are at risk.
Yeah.
And outside the prisons, their emotional wellness is at risk. And there's this beautiful opportunity when we hold space together in community or one-on-one to help someone go into those, into their woundedness, it's a really beautiful thing.
Yeah, and we also, in addition to working with the prisoners, we talk to the victims as well. And they call it sitting in the fire. I mean, that's where you sit and you listen from both the victim's side and the perpetrator side. You're listening to some pretty horrible things, but it's part of the healing process. That's what's so essential to know, and that's kind of how it works. So I think number one is to identify the pain and identify a time in your life when your needs were not met. Is that kind of, that concept of sitting in the fire? Have I got that kind of aligned correctly?
Yes. So if I were sitting at home and I were watching this video and I wanted to implement these lessons in my life, I would say, let's say I don't have someone I can call that I can trust that's going to create the safe space and hold my hand. If I just wanted to do this by myself, I think it can be done, and there's power in that, and I would recommend that someone start with a base of a higher power, because all this work that we're doing is heart-centered, and when we can surrender to a higher power, something that's bigger than us, then that can facilitate healing. And we're actually, the work that I'm suggesting in this module is all about surrendering our pain to a higher power.
Yeah.
So I just want to lay that foundation as part of this. And then when we go into the pain, sitting in the fire for sure, the whole point of this exercise is for us to identify some pain so that we can let it go. And how can we possibly let it go if we've locked it in a vault deep in our soul and it's got a big wall around it? That's normal that we would wall away our woundedness, but when we're ready for it, or when it's manifesting and it's coming out of it's leaking out and we have to deal with it, then we identify it, we name it, and we sit in it and we experience it, and that's the first key to being able to release it.
Yeah, and I don't know about you, but I think you probably felt the same way. When you're in the prison, you're hearing these stories, or when you're talking with a victim and hearing these stories, and they're really going through it emotionally, and they're laying out all their junk. You want to grab a box of Kleenex, you want to pat them on the back, and we're taught don't do that, because the more they can kind of connect with that pain, which is painful, I mean very painful, the better their healing will go, rather than trying to kind of smooth it over too quickly. Do you feel the same way? How do you feel about it?
Yeah, so I'm the one that wants to give them a Kleenex when I'm with them, because I feel like that's the
who
least
doesn't?
I can do. But yeah, for sure, we cannot rescue people from their pain. There's no way around it. There's no way over it. You have to go through it. And when we go through it in a safe place, and we have this higher power that we trust, and we identify it, and we just be in it. And I also want to reinforce that it's a dark place, and it's dark, and always holding that vision that it's temporary. It's like we don't always have the flu. The flu comes and goes. It feels like we're going to have the flu forever. So sitting in that fire is really powerful, and then trusting that it's not going to be forever, and that and it gets us to the point where we can release it. So I want people to know, when you're sitting in the fire, it's so that you can move to the next step. It's not just so you can be miserable and sit in that place forever.
Yeah, great point. And while we're on that kind of thinking, these are not necessarily check boxes. This is not a linear process. You might get here and revisit here, or get here and go here. These are the general concepts, but it's taken you literally years. I've watched you as you've kind of been, doing this research and doing this study and doing a lot of homework. So we're going over a very big topic relatively very, very quickly. We have to respect the fact that this is actually a very big topic. But I think it's important in Core IQ that we, at a minimum, have an understanding of that basic foundational outline.
Yes, and so let's say this is an elephant, and there's no way a person can digest this elephant by themselves in a short amount of time, but just knowing that it's an elephant is valuable, because that gives you hope. Yes, people are able to recover from trauma. Yes, people are able to heal from serious woundedness that impacts their life. Yes, there's life again after pain. So this is that elephant of hope that the body is capable of healing, the mind, body, spirit is capable of healing, and it can come in small pieces. Yes.
Yeah, and I remember, I think you went to San Quentin your very first time. I think we went together, didn't we? And
you introduced me.
Yeah. And I remember sitting in the parking lot afterwards because it's emotionally draining. I mean, you're in there for a 3-hour session, but you feel like you just ran a marathon. At least me. I don't know about you. And the thing, what's so shocking when you're doing this work, it's like walking into a Buddhist monastery. Not that I've been in a lot of Buddhist monasteries. My point is that it is very tranquil. The prisoners have been doing this work for months or years and are really very calm, very welcoming. You know, you have this idea, at least I did in prison, that, you know, guys are rattling cups against the bars and yelling and mean. It was anything but that. And we have friends now who are outside of the prison system. They've been incarcerated, they're out, and they're the nicest, coolest people you'd ever want to meet because they've been through this very difficult process, but they worked through it successfully. So it really does work. You know, to go through a really bad point in life and kind of get past that. This is real stuff.
And I would add to that, it's really, really impressive to me, the kind of work that people are doing in the prisons, and it reinforces my hope in humanity, and it reinforces there's nothing that we can't overcome. Yeah. Humans are resilient.
Indeed they are. So let's go to the next one, call on self-love. Help us learn more about that step.
Okay, so this says, invite your inner light to shine on your wounds. When we created this, we were trying to keep this so that it was something that anybody could do from any background, from any walk of life. And since revisiting this, I really feel like the only way to follow this model of healing is to change self-love to divine love. And I really feel like when we can find a higher power and surrender our woundedness and our pain to that higher power, then we can really see the miracle of healing. It's almost, I think it's too big for me. When I'm in that place of sitting in the fire and then I'm ready to shed my emotion, it's bigger than me and I need something higher. But my higher self is that, so that's why we wrote self-love, call on self-love. I do believe all of us have a higher self that's in us, that's that divine spark that makes us bigger than who we are, that is connected to the cosmos or to the community consciousness. And that also works if we don't want to call it a divine power. We can also call on that higher self that makes us part of the bigger universe. But that's what I'm talking about. When we talk about call on self-love, we invite our inner light to shine on our wounds. We invite divine light or universal light to come in, and we surrender to that.
Okay, I like that. Now, I've got a great friend, really a great guy, but he's a recovered alcoholic. Now, he's been sober, I think, for 20, 30 years, a long time. But he still goes to AA every day. And he said essentially this exact same thing you did, that they teach there you can't heal from this deep emotional trauma just solely on your own. You have to connect with a higher power, whatever you want to call that. You have to respect that there's something bigger than yourself out there and connect in that in some way. Is that basically saying the same thing?
Yep.
Okay.
And that's what this step is. So we identify our pain, we sit in it, we feel it, and then we say, okay, I surrender, I'm ready to let this go. Okay. And we see that divine light come down and shine, and we invite healing power into our life.
Okay. And then accountability. Let's talk about that.
Many times the pain that we're experiencing is because of the actions of someone else. And in order for us to completely heal, we need that person who caused the harm to take responsibility or accountability for the action that they took.
Right.
Now, let's say that I'm a victim of a violent crime. It's not likely that that person who committed that crime is going to come to me and take accountability for what he or she did.
Right.
So this is an exercise that's so powerful. I can call on, I can go into my sacred space with my divine power, and I can have an imaginary conversation with the person that needs to take accountability. I can do a role play in my head. I can hear that person say what it is I need to hear them say in order for me to heal. And I just really want to reinforce how powerful this is. When something happens in my imagination, that part of my brain that holds my imagination is the same part of my brain that facilitates healing and connection with spirit. So it's as if when I'm healing that part of me, it's as if I'm hearing that person in real life take accountability. And then I'm not looking or waiting for that person to come and give me closure. I'm taking control and kind of doing it through proxy. for lack of a better way to say it.
Yeah, and what's interesting, going back to the prison work that we've been involved with, if you have a victim who's, for example, been assaulted, and the prisoner, sometimes the prisoner is aligned with the actual victim, and there's a meeting that happens, and it's very, very powerful. But that doesn't always happen for obvious reasons. So what they do is, by proxy, they take a victim of assault and match them with a prisoner who committed assault, not necessarily on that person, but a similar crime, and then the prisoner apologizes to that victim as if it was their victim. And it has exactly the effect that you just talked about. It's very powerful, really works, and I would debate a skeptic any day of the week on the effectiveness of these principles. So anything else about accountability? You want to go to transformation?
I would just say about accountability, there might be people watching this who say, I don't even know what that looks like to imagine a person taking accountability. And I'm just going to propose that this kind of work is creative, it's intuitive. You could write a letter from that person to you and imagine getting that letter in the mail. You could make a video in your head of you being somewhere. Maybe it happened when you were a young child. You could make that video where you're the young child and you see that person. It's really creative work, and there are no rules about what it has to look like. I'm just encouraging people to really have fun, not have fun with it, but kind of follow your heart.
Kind of explore it.
Yeah.
Okay, great. Let's talk about transformation.
Transformation, express your negative feelings and emotions and exchange them for positive feelings and emotions. So just believing and intending that something can transform. I'm going to believe and intend that my hate and my rage and my anger and my sadness, I'm going to have an intention that that can transform into something else. And I'm going to language that, and I might write it out or I might say it, and it's a script, and there's power in words and there's power in scripting. And the script is going to sound like, I clear the negative energies, family patterns, and traditions of hate, rage, victimhood, anger, and I'm going to list everything I'm feeling and everything that I have, all that pain from sitting in the fire that came up, I'm going to list it. And then I'm going to say, I cast this to the sun to be repolarized into positive light, and I replace it with joy, acceptance, self-love, trust. So this is a really beautiful opportunity to transform and to set the intention that I can and want to and I'm willing to and able to and ready to trade what was so painful and release it and be ready to receive something that's what I'm ready to receive.
Okay. So forgiveness. Now, I got to jump in here and say forgiveness, we hear all the time, forgive and forget. Well, let's get real. You're not going to forget, some violent crime. You're not going to forget being ripped off in a fraud. You're not going to forget a lot of, really horrific things. So how do you really, on a practical basis, forgive when you're not going to forget?
So, honestly, I don't spend a lot of time hanging out in forgiveness, because once I'm in transformation, the forgiveness is not, it's a mood issue. If I've gone through transformation and I've recognized that all of that pain has been transformed into love and healing, then the forgiveness part doesn't seem, it's natural, because I realize, oh, that had to happen and it made me who I am today, and I love who I am today, and it was part of some sort of a grand design plan in my life, on my path. I can't change it. I see that I can just let it go, and that I want to say that forgiveness is really easy when you get to transformation, because when you truly transform all of that pain into love and healing, it's just easy. Okay,
but having said that, I think you would probably agree with me. Some painful thing comes along, and some people just they don't even know about these steps. They just want to prematurely leapfrog over all this work, and this is work that can take months and months,
years, a lifetime.
Years. Okay.
It depends. I mean, there's no recipe for this. There's just no recipe.
It's not a 10-minute thing. So you have the pain, but some people try and make it a 10-minute thing, and they leapfrog over and they go right to forgive. Oh, forgive, just let it go, let it go, let it go. And that can actually cause a lot of harm. Am I on the same wavelength?
I would never expect myself to forgive a wrongdoer who's caused me harm if I haven't gone through all of this.
Right.
I'm not going to forgive someone until I can see how it has helped me in some way become who I am. There's this beautiful thing that happens in transformation where all that pain becomes the mulch and the manure and the fertilizer for something new to emerge. And when that's nature's way, right? Nature has a way of taking spoils and things that are rotten and turning it into something for new things to grow. Until something new has grown, I would never expect myself to forgive someone.
Yeah.
Do you see what I'm saying?
Absolutely, absolutely. So if you're going to do this work with somebody, get somebody like yourself or someone who's, a licensed psychologist. Deal with someone who's been through some significant training rather than some hack or somebody who's just handing out anecdotes, because that kind of advice can cause enormous damage. You want somebody who really has been through the process and the training. Even though I've had 40 hours of training with the San Quentin program, I think you've had double that. I think you've had 80. Essentially what they're saying is, you don't know anything and keep your mouth shut. And there's, I'm oversimplifying it, but we're not in a position to start dispensing advice. Even with 80 hours of training, we're not dispensing advice to the inmates or to the victims. We're basically there as a confidential sounding board, someone that they can trust and really lay things out, and a safe place to kind of talk about these difficult situations. So make sure you're dealing with someone who really knows what they're doing, because they can take a bad situation and make it far worse. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, I would agree with that. And I would say there's a lot of power in witnessing someone else's pain.
Yeah.
And so when I go through life, I look for opportunities where I can just hold space and allow people to be where they are and witness their pain. And I don't give advice. But yes, for sure, be careful. This is,
It's sensitive stuff, and don't dig around with it. So we're at point 6 where we reframe. This is kind of the objective. Now again, I think we really got to stress and re-emphasize, even though it's already been said, this is not linear, and this is not something you say, oh, well, forget all this, let's just look at the top and just jump right into that. Because if you don't take these steps, which again could take months or years, you're not going to have any kind of authentic reframing. Do you see it the same way?
Yeah. It's a journey, it's a path, and it can look, who knows how it can look.
It can look messy sometimes, and you may be doing step 1 and then step 3 and then a little step 2 and then a little step 5. You can jump around. Ideally you end up here, but in the process of ending up here, you can revisit anything on this in these steps at any time, and there's nothing wrong with that.
I would agree with that, and I would add to that, it's been my experience that as soon as I see a client who goes through something, then that was one layer and now there's another layer. It's not like I have yet to meet someone who isn't in some kind of processing. I think until we die, we're processing.
Well, the science backs that up, because the sociological studies say that by college age, 50 to 68%, if my memory is right, of all students in college have already been through some kind of trauma. And I'm 59, I've been through probably 4 or 5 traumas. I mentioned the heart surgery I went through, and there have been others. So, the thing is that if you're going to live life, you're going to experience trauma. And so if you're going to experience trauma, healing skills are really kind of essential to kind of navigate and go forward in a positive way. Because I've seen others do things that weren't so, helpful in terms of healing. And then I've seen the positive, effective route. And it really works. It really, really works. Anything else about reframing?
No, I think we've covered everything. Well, reframing is just really having that perspective, that ability to look back on the past and say, oh, I understand that even when I didn't know I was on a path, I was on a path. Even when I was doing things that I thought didn't serve me, in some way it served me, and just embracing it and accepting it and being willing and able to see that big picture of, okay, that made me who I am and I'm okay with it.
Yeah. And I don't know if you even remember this, but when after your first time in San Quentin, we were sitting there talking and kind of deprocessing the whole experience, because it's pretty emotional. It's pretty exhausting, honestly. And you said something I never forgot. You said, you know what? some of the profound answers that are needed in the world, it's interesting, those answers may come from the men that we just met in there. Because the level of discussion was so much in tune with that. Do you remember making that comment? It's really true, because you think of these people, and my stereotypes were, frankly, I'm embarrassed to say, they were negative. As I went through the process, I realized how wrong I was, how much work they had done, and how much actual, not only respect that I had, I learned a lot from them. In fact, people that I had trusted, weren't doing so great, and yet I was getting really authentic, helpful information from some of the inmates. These gentlemen, they go into prison, macho, angry, full of denial. I never committed the crime, and if they go through this process, they come out absolutely with humility, with a desire to just fly straight the rest of their lives. Our friend is in college. He's working towards his PhD. He's married and has a child, and he's got a job, and he's just doing great. And like anybody, he has his challenges. We all have our challenges, but he literally went from being incarcerated for over 20 years in San Quentin to really doing something with his life. And it's through this process. It's very powerful stuff. What are your observations?
I agree with everything you said, and I do feel like the incarcerated individuals who are living in a violent, oppressed environment are able to do this. And they are in prison because they were victims of violent crimes themselves and were acting out from their own pain. So for them to be able to find peace in a violent world tells me that there's hope for the entire human race.
I can't top that. We'll just leave it right there. Suzanne, great stuff. I'm going to give you the last word. Any last comments, or we got it?
Thank you.
Thank you. And thanks for watching. Make sure to do the worksheets. Read up more. This is just a brief overview of a very big, important topic. Make sure that you keep building your core IQ by watching more and more episodes. Just take the episodes one at a time. Don't rush them. Kind of take them. Do the worksheets, absorb them, and when you're ready, go on to the next one as we keep building our core IQ. Thanks for watching.